behalf of the World Food Programme, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Climate Partners event.
We currently have a huge problem in the international climate architecture, especially when it comes to climate finance, because the countries that require the most support, so the most climate vulnerable, they're not receiving that. And there's a group of countries which are, in addition to being highly climate vulnerable, they're also affected by conflict and fragility. And when we look at the data, these countries are those that are receiving the least amount of international climate finance.
We don't have the direct access entity. Coordination is another challenge in the country. We would like to see or improve on that by effectively engaging with our existing stakeholders and the new ones that are coming into the country. So an opportunity there for us to mobilize and have access to climate financing in the country.
Simplification is quite problematic, so that's why we always requested conference of parties to provide further guidance to the financial operating entities under the financial mechanism like DCF, like GF, and also adaptation fund, and even loss and damage fund and corresponding loss and damage, to simplify the procedural issues to be easy access to the fund.
C'est ce défi-là par rapport à la longue procédure d'approbation des projets. Et ça, c'est vraiment compliqué dans ce sens. Si on pouvait avoir une amélioration, on est preneur.
What they can do better, and they're actually doing that, is to raise their collective voice more, to advocate more for themselves.
Bilateral cooperation is also quite useful for Timor-Leste to get additional financial resources for mainly adaptation and also for addressing loss and damage, and in fact mitigation is also quite useful to get support bilaterally.
Development through peace will stabilize most of our country, because we are not a poor country, but only the conflict, the fragility is due to the conflict, the political instability and stuff. But when we now invest more in development projects, I think it will stabilize the country.
The Green Climate Fund is working really proactively to get climate finance into the most vulnerable settings, particularly those affected by fragility or conflict. We've amassed a $2.7 billion portfolio in countries that are affected by fragility and conflict, and we've learnt 4 things along the way. The first is, how do we make sure that countries with very little capacity can access the readiness, the preparedness funding that GCF makes available so they can plan out their pipeline? The second thing is, how do we build the capacity of countries themselves? Where are the local and national entities that we can capacitate and build so that they can receive finance directly from GCF? The third area is, how do we move from thinking about project by project or sector by sector to saying what will have most transformational value at a country level? How do we combine sectors, those building blocks of resilience, food, livelihoods, energy, water, to transform a whole situation at country level? And the fourth thing, how do we wrap that up in a country platform? So how do we make sure that countries know what they need to invest in according to their NDCs and NAPs and national development plans? And how does GCF help countries pull that information together, not just so that we have an investment pipeline, but that any climate financier can come in and say, there's a clearly prioritised list, here's what we're doing for transformational value, and we want in on that investment.
MDBs work through national systems, so all our financing goes through national governments themselves. And that means that we're working within those systems, we're helping build the capacity of especially fragile, some of the conflict-affected countries. And it means that that money channeled through national government helps to build their capacity, their systems to deliver basic services on climate and other development priorities. So that's a big advantage of the MDB and the World Bank system.
The Adaptation Fund has created what we call the locally led adaptation. This locally led adaptation allows countries to mobilize local institutions to design project grounds up and to be able to access the fund. So it's a direct access process.
On souhaiterait, au nom de tous les pays du Sahel, avoir un guichet Sahel, un guichet pour le pays Sahel, pour qu'on puisse nous faciliter les choses au niveau du Fonds vert climat.
coordination among financial entities at global and also international level or regional level will be crucially important.
The role of WFP is exactly to bring these parties together to make sure that even in the fragile contexts, nations, populations are not bypassed just because they live in such a context, creating opportunities even in these fragile contexts where WFP has the advantage, the edge of being physically present more than other partners.